up there? Welcome to the Savvy Entrepreneur Show. If you're an entrepreneur or a small business person, or you're thinking about becoming one, this show is just for you. I'm Doris Nagel, your host for the next hour. I'm a crazy entrepreneur myself, and I love helping other entrepreneurs. I've counseled lots of startups and small businesses over the past 30 years, and I've been involved in starting several different businesses. I have seen a lot of mistakes, and I myself have made lots of mistakes. The show really has two goals. First, to share helpful information and resources so that hopefully you won't make some of those same mistakes that I've seen or that I've made. And the second goal is to inspire. I found being an entrepreneur sometimes lonely, discouraging, confusing. There's so much you need to know, and sometimes you're just never sure if you're making the right decision or not. And I always found when I was confused or not sure what to do, I always found inspiration in listening and talking to other entrepreneurs. So, along that vein, to help with both those goals, I have guests on the show every week who are willing to share their stories and their advice. And my guest this week is Jenna Piche. She is the founder of a company called First Light Health. And she's going to share with us the story of her journey, along with some of the things that First Light Health does to help women, business women, and women entrepreneurs. Jenna, thanks so much for joining me this week. Welcome to the Savvy Entrepreneur Show.
Thank you so much, Doris, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am excited to have you on this beautiful summer morning. First, let's talk about First Light Health. What does it do, and who are your clients or customers?
As the founder of First Light Health, I am a holistic time management and productivity coach. So ultimately, my goal is to help other busy, overcommitted entrepreneurs prioritize their to-do list and manage their time so they can grow a business that they're proud of without sacrificing their most important relationships or their health.
Wow, that's a very admirable goal. One that I'm sure resonates with lots of entrepreneurs, because I just think about the times I've been involved with businesses, either helping them or being part of a startup. And the one thing that everybody realizes is just how much there is to know and to learn and to do, right?
Right. And I think that we all get into business or start a business because there's something we want to do. There's someone we want to serve. We have this great idea. And so we have this big passion. And I think that that's a blessing and a curse, right? That passion is what drives us forward to create this thing. But we are kind of oblivious to everything it takes to kind of birth that business baby into the world. And so balance, I think, is a myth, but there's certainly a lot that goes into it. And that's, ultimately what I find is that we all just have too many things to do on our list, and we're not giving ourselves enough grace that those things are kind of all consuming. And if we let them consume us, they can overtake other parts of our lives that we consider valuable. I don't think any of us would say that we would meaningfully sacrifice a marriage or closeness with our kids or even sabotage our health to grow a
Yeah,
business.
right,
But
right.
unfortunately, a lot of us do that unknowingly.
I want to definitely dig into some of the possible whys about that and how to spot some of those issues, because sometimes I think, and I'm speaking from personal experience, when you're in the throes of things, sometimes things are a lot worse than you think they are. But before we go there, I just want to spend a few minutes talking about how you decided to start this business. When did that happen?
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to work for myself and be an entrepreneur, mostly because I saw my dad as a self-employed contractor growing up. He had time freedom. He was able to really design the life that he wanted. And that certainly came with challenges that I witnessed too. But I worked at job sites with him and really kind of got that entrepreneurship bone in my body. So I always knew I wanted something, but I hadn't had my light bulb moment of how I could serve. It
Ah,
wasn't until I'd had my second kiddo. So I have two boys at home, they're 5 and 3. And when my 3-year-old was born, I really struggled with my digestive health. And there were a lot of things going on. I had a 2-year-old and a newborn. I was over exercising, trying to get back into shape, whatever that means for new
Oh, well,
mothers.
the stress of a new baby. I mean, as a mom myself, I mean, I just, it's like a tidal wave. I don't know
Right.
how, it's almost impossible to prepare yourself for all the ways your life changes.
Yeah, there is no handbook and we all
No.
figure it out. But the thing I think I wasn't prepared for was just the hormonal change and the things that would change in my body that I wouldn't expect, and the emotional changes that came along with that. I had always defined my identity by what I was accomplishing in my professional life. And so having kids really shook that for me, especially having my second. And then I always considered myself a healthy, active person. And it took me a little longer to bounce back after my second kid. So I was
Mhm.
pushing myself too hard. I was over exercising, and I was still trying to run at a career because I was, trying to still navigate and toe that line of what does achievement look like in this new way of life. And
Yeah. Yeah.
ultimately I burned myself out.
Yep.
So I was navigating that, and I tried to go through a conventional doctor. I didn't really get the answers that I needed. So I just thought, look, I can't be sick for my kids. I want to be around when they have kids and be an active grandma. And so I dug in and figured that out. I actually really started researching functional health and got a certification there, and thought, let me serve moms and provide them the education that they need after having babies that I feel like I didn't have and that I needed as part of my healing journey.
Yeah.
But then I realized, as I was starting to talk to moms 2 years ago when I started that business on the side, what I was hearing was, I'd love to focus on my health, Jenna, but I don't have time. I have 50 things I got to do at work today. Plus, I got to take off at 4 o'clock and shuttle the kids from this practice to that practice. Or, I have an aging parent and I just don't have time to myself because I'm so busy taking care of them. And that was the moment where I thought, gosh, as much as I want to help with health, people don't realize they need that. And so I'm not going to create a market, but I can leverage a market where folks already know they need help, and that's time management. So I started digging into that and found a survey that said that entrepreneurs, 51% of them report struggling with time management. So I
Yeah.
thought, well, here, let me serve that need.
Yeah.
And so I made a pivot in my business 3 or 4 months ago when I really started hearing that from working women. And it's been it's been a wild ride since, but it's been so fulfilling because now I'm having conversations with women about what they truly need, and creating the space so that they can focus on their health or whatever else they need to, because they're not bogged down by some crazy to-do list.
It's interesting. I'm thinking as I'm listening to you talk about your own journey and your how you pivoted. It's interesting. I too had a business that I was convinced people needed, but people probably weren't quite ready to hear about it. And it's interesting how difficult it is to try to pitch services that you in your heart of hearts are sure, you're dead sure, they need, but the ground is not fully tilled enough for the seeds to germinate. And I'm thinking about this one in terms of almost you really have to tap into mental health, but there's such a resistance to tapping into it because if you tell people you want to help them with their health, everybody jumps to the idea, oh, well, she's going to help me, develop a fitness routine or prescribe vitamins or supplements for me or something,
Mhm.
as opposed to the more holistic kind of thought process about health.
Yeah, and that was a huge hurdle. So I have a marketing background. I've been in marketing for 20 years, and so I really leaned into that and saying, let me give them what they want, but then I can deliver what they need. Right? So the
Right.
mental piece of health is so important because really our emotions can get stored up in our body if we're not really good at processing them. So, it's not just traumatic experiences. Unfortunately, there have been plenty of women who have lived with assault or, watching an alcoholic parent grow up or being neglected in some way, right? And so our bodies certainly store up that negative energy, and it can manifest in a lot of different ways, in pain, in issues with your digestion. And if we don't process and release those traumas, it can really cause some lifelong issues. But, there's things that maybe folks wouldn't necessarily consider traumatic that your body thinks is.
Right, right. I
So,
mean, just the mass accumulation of different stresses can
right.
push you over the top. And, I think that's probably happened in some form to most of us at some point.
Well, and I think the key there is the accumulation of it all, right? So these little things that happen here and there don't seem like a big deal, but when you pile them all on top of each other and you're not processing any one of them, the accumulation of all of them can be a huge stress. And stress is actually the number one factor for a lot of different reoccurring diseases, autoimmune disease that
Yeah,
folks really struggle with. The
right.
reason that people go to the doctor, when if we were just better at handling our stress, we would be a lot happier and healthier.
Yeah. And I think part of that, and again, I'm drawing upon my own experiences, but I think part of it is you just want to deny that there is stress associated with certain kinds of things. Like I can handle this, or I need to
Mhm.
handle this, so I'm not going to let this bother me, right?
Yeah, I think we live in this society, especially American culture, where we have this drive to push. The American dream means that we must achieve all these things. And so, especially as entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, we have that bone in our body where we just go, go, go. We're trying to push on to the next thing when there's so much benefit and clarity in slowing down and reflecting on what's the lesson that I'm supposed to be learning here.
Oh,
Because I have found
yeah,
that if you don't learn from the lesson you're taught, life will continue to put that lesson in front of you until you eventually learn it.
indeed. Well, let's circle back to your background a little bit. You mentioned your dad and your marketing background, but I'm curious how you put all those pieces together to build a business and how some of those things in your background helped you start this business.
Yeah. Well, first I'd say that I always knew I wanted service-based because I saw the delight that my dad would provide when he remodeled a home, right? Or helped someone build a home. And when they, handed over the keys or moved in, there was just this extreme excitement. And I thought, what a cool thing that he's able to deliver this. I would love to be able to help someone have half the joy that he's giving there. So I always knew I wanted to serve in some way. And then, through my marketing career, I really enjoyed working with business owners and understanding what makes them tick and what's working and what's not, and just the drive that entrepreneurs have to succeed. And it's not just because they want to do the thing. We all have our why, whether it's, serving your family or raising money so you can use that to donate, whatever your thing is. But I just have been so inspired by the small business owners that I served as a marketer. And then, working with different organizations, I worked for healthcare organizations and universities and marketing agencies, but I really circled back on how can we optimize our process? What can we do operationally to make this easier for our clients and easier for our people to do the work we need to do without stressing us out? And so when I was sitting back and thinking about this pivot, I thought, I've always really loved optimization. I'm never okay with just sitting in one place and saying, well, this is great because this is how we've always done it. How can we make this 1% better? How can we deliver a better result? And so I think that's really what made this pivot, uh, just reinforced it in my mind because the idea that when people come to me, they're asking, oh, Jenny, you seem to fit in your workouts. When are you getting those in? Or when do you have time to plan healthy meals for your family? Or, things like, oh, it seems like you guys are getting a lot of things done and you're still leaving work at, 4:30 or 5 o'clock. How are you doing that?
Well,
And so
it's what it strikes me as, tell me if I'm wrong, but that you're a marketing person, but you're hardwired maybe more like an operations person, which is an interesting blend because a lot of marketing people I know certainly are not thinking about, they're thinking about optimizing the marketing that they're doing, but not necessarily processes. I think that's kind of unique for you.
well, and that's what I enjoy. And I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes we don't sit back and think, what are my unique talents? And how can I leverage that to serve? Because I was listening to a book by Michael Port. It's called Book Yourself Salad.
Oh
And
yeah, right.
one of the things I love in that book that that really resonated with me is he talked about, what do people come to you for? If you were to ask folks, what is a unique thing that you do or unique memory that they have with you? What are they going to say? And, for me, I feel like folks were reaching out to me to ask me health questions, but also reaching out to ask me, how are you doing this? How did you figure this thing out? I'm doing it this way and I feel like I could do it better. And so I think as entrepreneurs, we really need to lean into that. What do other people see as our strengths that sometimes we're blind to on our own?
So that's a great bit of advice right there. So, what about your background did you find was a gap that didn't really prepare you for starting your own business? I mean, what were the kinds of things you looked at and went, "Oh, wow, gosh, I didn't think about that. How do I find out about that?"
Yeah. I think finances. I have an operations brain, I have a marketing brain, so I really enjoyed digging into that part of my business, and that's where I went first. But the finances of how am I going to price my programs, and
Mm,
how am I going to handle cash flow? What do I need to do with management and checking accounts and forecasting? I really love diving into a good spreadsheet, but I just didn't have the tools
yeah.
to really wrap my brain around this. And that's ultimately why I ended up hiring a coach. And I think that we all need one. Amateurs do it on their own and professionals have coaches, right? Even
For
when you think about
sports,
athletes.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I thought, why am I trying to do this myself? Someone has already figured this out. I could do this myself and sit here and waste 10 hours of time. But I'm a time management person, so that didn't seem like a good idea. So
Yes, time management expert has to manage her own time excellently, right?
right. So I went out and found a coach who gave me the tools to make it easier. And so what probably would have taken me more than 10 hours, probably a week of painlessly going through and trying to develop it on my own, I got tools and spreadsheets and had some conversations and was really able to navigate those waters a lot more easily because I had a foundation and a who to help drive me through that. And I think it was less painful, but you also have to find someone who loves that.
Right.
One of the things that I
Absolutely.
that I coach is, just because something is in my drudgery zone, I don't have passion or proficiency there, doesn't mean it's not in someone else's desire zone. I like thinking about what we do on this matrix of passion versus proficiency. Finances are not in my desire zone, but they're in someone else's. And
Right.
so
Right.
hiring them to do it in, a quarter of the time and let them be excited about it, that was a win-win.
Yeah, that's a tough one because there's such a tendency, especially when you're first starting, and especially if you're self-funded,
Hmm.
you think, well, I don't have any money coming in. I got to tough it out and figure out how to do this myself,
Yeah. And
right?
I did that for a while, but I think you get to a point where you hit a wall and then you just think there's no amount of energy that's going to get me where I need to be here. And that's when you realize sometimes I need to invest a little bit to get a return and be able to make some more.
Yeah.
Or there's something to be said about making an investment for a peace of mind, knowing that that part of your business is taken care of because whether whether you do the thing or not, if it's on your list, it's still taking an emotional toll on you.
Oh, isn't that the truth? The thing that just is on your list and you look back at your list 3 weeks ago and that bloody thing is still on the list. I mean, it's just
Right?
like It's like a hammer that just kind of keeps hammering at you every single day. Oh, I should have done this. And those shouldas those are heavy, man. After,
Yeah.
especially over time, they weigh a lot.
I have an entrepreneur friend who says that friends don't let friends should on themselves. I really like that.
I like
Uh,
that too.
but it's fair because if we have something that sits on our list for, weeks and weeks at a time and we just can't get ourselves to do it, it's likely not the discipline. It's likely we have some kind of block or fear in doing that thing.
Yes.
And we need to work through what that block or fear is. So then again, it's coming to that idea of, well, let me slow down and see, why am I not doing this? Do I not feel proficient? Am I scared? Maybe this is a really risky thing for me to do.
Yeah.
So slowing down can really help us move forward more quickly.
Yep. Even what we're talking about with our own businesses ties into the things that you help your clients with. And I thought about the theme of women business people trying to do too much. Our mutual colleague and friend, Laura Gallagher, was talking on the show not too long ago. And by the way, I encourage people to take a listen to the interview that I did with her. It's called Just Say No to Silos. But in there, she talks a lot about her challenges with trying to do too much. And, I've been thinking about that theme a lot lately. And it struck me that you're a great person to have maybe a little bit of a conversation about that. Why do you think so many business women, and especially women entrepreneurs, are so prone to trying to do too much?
Oh, how much time do we have, Doris? I
Well,
think
the abbreviated version, I guess.
so. I was doing market research when I was starting this part of my business, and the theme that I heard over and over was, I'm overcommitted. I have too many things going on. And I think it's because women being in the workforce full time, some of us even being the main breadwinner for our families, is a relatively new concept, within a generation or two. And
Right.
while we think that we're making progress, we still have these subconscious ideas that it's our job to take care of the house and the home. And it's our job to make sure that the kids are fed and getting where they need to go. And so pruning is a lovely thing, right? You prune back your garden to make sure that things have the opportunity to grow and space to grow, but yet we aren't good at it as women. We continue to add to the list
Yeah.
without pulling things off. And so many people are so quick to say, oh, I need to do this one more thing. And oh, this expert over here says I need to do this. And oh, I need to start drinking a green shake. And oh, I need to exercise at 5 o'clock in the morning. And we add, add, add. And we don't remove anything to make time for that.
Well, that's
So,
because we're supposed to be perfect multitaskers. We're supposed to be able to handle all this in stride and not break. They're supposed to tough it out.
well, and I think that supposed to is another should, right?
Yes, it is.
It's this silent contract that we have with, I don't know with who, with the universe, within our marriage, whatever it might be with our partners. But those silent contracts don't end up working out well for us. There's a lot of expectation in that when it's not spoken, it really can lead to a lot of resentment. I mean, show me a woman who's overcommitted, and we can probably in 2 seconds of a conversation find out that she's got resentment somewhere in her life. And that's not healthy to carry either.
No.
So, as much as we'd love to think that these women are doing it all and handling it, they're losing their sanity.
Yeah.
And it's not sustainable. And that's not good for our business. It's not good for our families. It's not good for our health. So I think as a society, we need to do a better job of allowing women to speak their truth and say no. I have a
Right.
girlfriend who is a healthcare executive in Tennessee, who's also on the PTO, who has her kid in 15 different camps over the summer. And I'm just sitting here thinking, why? Why? And she's like, because I don't feel like I can say no. So I think just making it okay to say no and then honoring and supporting women's boundaries when they do set them is a
Yes,
huge shift we need to do. And
it is.
there's the right way to say no. I can say no to an invitation to a board or a volunteer position I call it the power of a positive no. I can honor the fact that what you're doing and what you're asking me to do is an amazing thing. And then I can set my boundary and say, but I have other commitments that require my time elsewhere. And then you can support them by saying, I'd love to help you find someone else for that role. Who are you looking for? So I can look in my network and make you an introduction. And I think when you approach a no and a boundary in that way,
Mhm.
people are more likely to honor them and you feel better about saying it.
Yeah. I think that's true. And I do think one thing you said that's really important is we women need to give each other permission to say no and to draw boundaries. I'm thinking how when I was raising my daughter as a single mom, obviously I was the only breadwinner. It was overwhelming being a new mom and being a single mom. And, I got a lot of bad buzz from a lot of the other moms in the neighborhood, because they were all pitching in at the school and volunteering. And I wanted to do those things, but I was already on the skids with my employer for taking off so much time for doctor's appointments. And, your kid is sick and you got to take them
Right.
home. And the list goes on and on. And, I don't think those women understood. They, over time, really kind of gave me the cold shoulder. And I know it was because I didn't volunteer at the PTO. I wasn't in the classroom a lot like they were. And I think they kind of felt I should, but I don't think they had any clue of how much I was juggling. And I just couldn't do it. So I think it's important that before we judge another woman about not doing this or not stepping up to do that, you don't know what they're going through, right? Try to
Yeah.
withhold judgment.
I think if we could all just lead with compassion, we would be in a much better place, in our businesses, in the world, and frankly for ourselves. How often did you, for example, have the conversation with yourself that, gosh, I should be
Oh,
volunteering or I should be
oh,
doing
I
this,
felt
right? And
terribly
beating
guilty.
yourself up.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. There's a whole piece of me here. I thought I was, kind of sort of holding things together most days, but then obviously there's a whole area that I've fallen short on.
And we look at it that way, right? We look at it as falling short when we need to acknowledge all the things we are doing.
Right.
There's this there's science that says there's something called the Zeigarnik effect. And it's this idea that we could accomplish 50 things in a day, but we will focus and fixate on the thing we started and didn't finish, or the thing we didn't get done, or the area we're lacking in. Right. And these are the things that come up at night before you go to bed, or, the things that you think about when you're driving, like, oh, I should have done that, or I should have done
Right.
this. Where rather, if we just acknowledged all the things we are doing in one column and put the thing that, is on our mind in the other column, we would see that the scale is really heavily falling in the area of all the things we're doing right. But we don't slow down to take the time to acknowledge ourselves for all the effort we are making because
Right.
we're moving too fast.
Absolutely right. I went through a phase in my life where, as a single mom, I think I was unaware of the fact that I was overcommitted. I was so busy trying to check things off my list that I ended up in a place at one point where essentially I was pretty close to a mental breakdown. And looking back, I marveled at how could I have not seen the warning signs? So, how do you help people who maybe aren't even aware that they're in total overwhelm mode?
Oh, first, I think it's helpful to have someone in your life that recognizes that you are overwhelmed. So, women, if you hear your friends saying, I am just so busy, I don't have any time for myself, or, they're complaining about how they're not getting enough sleep or their health is starting to suffer, those are huge warning signs. And so, if we can't break ourselves free to see it, those are great opportunities to just raise a flag for a friend, right? Let's support each other enough to say, hey, you might be running at a pace that isn't sustainable. How can I help? What can we
Right.
pull off your list? How can I support you? So I think that's the outside perspective. Internally, I think it's that idea of when we get to that exhaustion point, because many women I know have been there at least once, if not unfortunately multiple times, rather than thinking, well, this is the way that women have done it for years and years, so I should be able to do it. It's taking the time to think, there's got to be a better way. My family and I deserve more. So I think using the words like busy and overcommitted or looking at pages and pages of a to-do list, those are huge red flags that maybe you need to take a break and be more intentional with how you're spending your time.
Yeah. And I think the thing that contributes to it, and certainly was the issue in my case, you may not have enough of a support group to be able to tell you that because you're so bloody busy doing stuff, but you may start to see the cracks at work. And that is truly where, in my case, where panic set in, because if you're starting to drop balls at work, or you're sensing that your boss or your job is just, it's not cutting it because you're not being able to spend enough time doing it, that is truly where it becomes very terrifying. Because if you start to become in trouble financially, I'm telling you, that's where the panic button
Yeah.
really goes off for a lot of us.
Great point. And I guess I would add to that too, if you feel like you're dropping balls, if you are losing track of things that need to get done, and because of that, you start to lose important clients, or you miss a big event for your kid, or showing up for someone who's important to you. Frankly, I even think that it's a good moment to pause when we feel like we're going through every day, but we're really not working toward anything. We have these distant dreams of what we want to accomplish, but we can't seem to make any progress. That's another great sign. And again, that requires slowing down and starting to think about it. But, in those moments in the shower or driving in the car when you just, you have 10 seconds to think, if you have some of that dissonance, that's a great opportunity to just look at what are my core values and how can I align my time better so I can live out to the kind of life that I want to lead.
Do you take your clients through a standardized process? Talk a little bit about how that works with First Light Health.
Sure. So first, I walk everyone through a productivity assessment. One, because I feel it's very tangible for folks to understand on paper where could they be doing better. And so that gives us the opportunity to say, oh, it looks like I'm not hitting my goals, or it looks like I'm not able to shut off work, or, I'm working until 12 in the morning to do email, right? So I love triaging those things that are really causing the pain initially.
Mhm.
Secondly, though, I really dive into, what are your values and your goals for your life? What do you want to accomplish? And not just from a career standpoint, right? But professionally, that's great. Personally, spiritually, do you like to travel? Do you have time for that? What fills your cup? I invite my clients to make a joy list. What brings you joy in
I
your life?
love that.
And when
Yeah.
was the last time you were able to do that? So
Yeah.
we start with this, and then we start creating systems. So I start by helping my clients cut their to-do list and start with just 3 things each day to reduce some of that to-do list anxiety. We redesign their week to be more intentional about how they're spending their time, and then we start triaging other things that tend to be a problem, like meetings. How are you handling your meetings? Do you have too many? How much energy can you bring to those? How are you handling your email? Do we need to look at delegating? And then we even dive into it, and I mentioned this earlier. What are the things that you're really passionate about and proficient in? And how can we help you spend more of your work time in that zone and less of your work time doing the things that just absolutely drain your energy?
What I love about your process, Jenna, is the fact that it's an external, unbiased viewpoint. I'm sure I'm not alone in struggling with that, the fact that some of the people in our network, maybe some of the people we care most about or closest about, have values that they put on other people. So I have a friend who's quite religious, for example, and she's always saying, Doris, you need, when I'm going through a crazy time, you need to spend more time focusing on your spirituality and get back involved with the church. And, I kind of push back on that, kind of like, well, wait, that's just because that's important to you. And,
Mhm.
I'm not here to say whether that was relevant or that was the right thing to say, only that sometimes people in your network come with their own set of biases about maybe what they think you should be doing differently. Sometimes it's hard to listen to that. They might be right, they might be wrong, but that is one advantage of having an external, unbiased person to look at this.
Right. And ultimately, my goal is to help folks just move from being overcommitted and scattered and unfulfilled to really living into the life they want and aligning their time with their values, being more focused and organized. And I think when you have external forces at play, even if they mean well, they do project some of what they want, which may not be what you want.
Right.
For
Right.
example, I worked with a client who was running a family-owned coffee shop. She had an 18-month-old son at home, and her husband was a serial entrepreneur. But she was killing herself in this job, not spending as much time with her husband or her kid as she wanted. And she had a passion to be a flight nurse. She didn't even
Wow.
want to run the family business. She wanted to be a flight nurse. And
Wow.
so after, conversations about what is it that you want and then how can we set goals and help you take daily action to achieve those, in 6 months she went through having serious hard conversations with her own husband to say this isn't serving me, this isn't what I want, even if it's what you want, to landing her dream job as a flight nurse and now having 3 days off a week that she spends with her husband and her kid. And it's amazing to me when I don't create these light bulbs or tell folks what to do, but we facilitate just the space for you to dream
Yeah.
and then help you be accountable to take daily action to accomplish that.
So I think it's interesting how we put ourselves in our own prisons a lot of times.
Mm.
We are prisoners to expectations, some that do exist and some that maybe don't really even exist, but we think they exist, about who the people around us think we are and what they think or we think they think we should be doing. A lot of times there's probably some of that where people are like, wow, somebody goes off and changes careers like that. And you're like, wow, I thought I knew her, but wow, I guess I didn't. But it's hard sometimes to break through those barriers of so and so thinks I'm this and I'm that, and I need to do this. And now we're back to the shouldas again, right?
Mhm. And the people pleasing. A lot
Yeah.
of us have that kind of were raised with that environment, right? I have a perfect example of how this worked when I started my business initially. So I have some folks in my family who are traditionally trained, went to medical school and are amazing humans. I've called them when my kids have a rash or something going on, right? Do they need to go to the doctor or can we just sit this out? But for that same very reason, when I got into functional medicine and health coaching, I was really scared to put myself out there and talk about some of these ways to support yourself that didn't involve taking a pill, or going to the doctor for every ailment. And then when I found, I wasn't really living into the kind of person I wanted to be, and me playing it small wasn't serving wasn't serving the people I was meant to serve. There's this really great I think it's Wilson quote that talks about how, us playing it small isn't serving the world. And when we live into our potential, we inspire others to do the same. And the longer I sat in that fear of what are people going to think of me, I was not serving the people I was called to help.
Right. It is ironic, isn't it?
Mhm.
How do you typically find your clients?
Yeah, I think this is a trial and error process. When I was in marketing, I found a lot of clients through networking. So as I've started my business, that's how I really started, making
Yeah.
connections with folks. And and then having them refer me business. And that's helped, but that's certainly a long game. So, as starting a business, I've really enjoyed kind of carrying that over into the podcasting world. I love doing podcast interviews with folks like you, Doris, just to have a real conversation, but also to serve your audience. And, for the other entrepreneurs out there, I've learned that this is a great way to grow my audience by leveraging someone else's. And, if I can show up and serve in that way, that is, help me grow an email list, for example, that then I can market to and build some trust and then build clients that way. So I've really doubled down in taking my networking conversations to more of an interview, radio show, podcast situation. And that's really helped me.
Great. What are your favorite kinds of clients? And what are the kind that kind of drive you a little crazy? I've been a consultant for a long time of different kinds of things. And I wish I mean, I could tell you maybe kind of with a straight face that all are created equal, but it just wouldn't be true, honestly.
Well, I think we all have our own values and I don't tend to operate well with folks who live in victim mentality. I believe that, we can at least influence our life. Maybe we don't have complete control, but we certainly influence where it's going with our mindset and the actions we take daily or inaction we take. So I really like working with clients who are action oriented, who take ownership of their own story and believe that they have some power to influence and change it. Victim mentality is just not something I really have a lot of patience for. And
why do you think people fall back on the victim mentality? I can see how that would happen a lot, honestly.
I think it's easy because you don't have to do the work and you're not shining. That's another challenge that is growing a business. You have to do a lot of internal work and shine a mirror on yourself in the deepest, darkest parts of you. Because if you're not growing as a business owner, it's really hard to grow your business. You need to know yourself to understand who you can best serve and who you don't want to serve. And I think that it's easier to just move quickly and move past your emotions and blame it on someone else than, even in a bad situation that from the outside may not look like your fault, ask, well, what was my role in this? How was I complacent? How did I enable this situation to happen? And if folks don't have some kind of awareness in that area, I think I would drive them nuts and they would drive me nuts. So I've learned that lesson. I think the other one too is just a willingness to make a change. I know plenty of people who are very positive minded, but they don't take action. So I love folks who are ready to try and implement something and just make it an experiment. We're all adjusting a little bit here and there along the way. But if you're going to provide lip service to what you talk through and then don't take action to make it happen, that's a little frustrating for me too.
Yeah, change is pretty hard, but if you don't actually even make the right noises about wanting to change, you're never going to change. It's like hoping to win the lottery. If you don't even buy a ticket or two,
right? Exactly.
Not going to happen. Sorry.
Well, and I'm sure, as you know, with the businesses that you've worked through and run, those folks who are going to have the most success are the ones who actually put the action and the effort in. So those are the folks that I really enjoy working with and I feel make the biggest leaps and bounds toward the kind of life they want to lead.
Right, which is, I'm sure, really gratifying.
Absolutely.
What plans for growing the business? What will First Light Health look like 3 years from now if you're successful?
Yeah, well, I don't know if this is on all entrepreneurs' hearts, but I have a book on my heart that I would like to write sometime in the next 2 years. And I really just enjoy speaking and educating people. So I want to take that as an opportunity to, take this mission on the road and try to impact more entrepreneurs' lives and help them realize that, you can grow a successful business without sacrificing some more important parts of your life. So in 3 years, I hope that looks like a small but mighty team, not just me. And, the ability to go speak on stages to impact folks' lives and and maybe take this into corporations and,
Oh,
help
yeah.
more of those folks who are struggling with managing their time and getting burned out to prevent that.
Yeah. So I hear your business would be national, right?
I would love that.
Yeah. Well, I have some ideas. We'll talk after the show of some past guests and organizations that I've networked with that I think might be interested in having you present to them or do a class for them or a webinar or something like that if you're interested. So we'll talk after the show.
Great. Thank you.
Given your working with other entrepreneurs and your own experience, what advice would you offer to a woman thinking about starting a new business?
I would say start by doing that market research. Really try to find out not just what you're passionate about, but do people have a need for the thing that you're looking for? And I hear this, but the tangible way to do that is to call up 5 people in your network or in your friend group who you think you might want to serve and start asking them questions, and then ask them things like, what would make you want to hire someone like me? And how much would you pay for that? And then the responsible part would then also look at, is this a good time in my life to take this leap? Is it relevant based on everything else I have going on? I think that's something that I do in goal setting that maybe others miss, is maybe it's not tangible for you to start a business right now because you just had a baby, or you have 3 kids in daycare right now, and so that stable income is great, so maybe you want to wait 2 years until you don't have that daycare expense and you have a little less financial pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Learn from my mistake. I took one of the things I might change in my journey is I got fed up, and I was ready. I was ready to work for myself. And I know that some of us we just trust our gut and we run and we make things work. And I've certainly done that. But if you can have a little forethought into what's the best timing, not that there's ever a great time, but
Right.
what can serve me in the season of life that I'm in.
Yes, that's great advice. And I think people underestimate, and I'm just speaking from somebody who's advised small business people and even my own experience, how much pre-work there is to be done that frankly you could be doing and investing in even as you're working. There's just a lot of foundational stuff, and it all takes more time. And so if finances are a concern for you, start putting those building blocks in place before you leave that job. And even though it may not feel very good and not as good as quitting that job and, starting up the business of your dreams, it's, you learn a lot through putting those foundational blocks down. And sometimes the business you thought people wanted isn't quite that, it's something else, or the laying of the foundation leads to other kinds of things that you're like, wow, yeah, no, this is what I really want.
Right. And I would challenge listeners to take a look at their week, right? Because if you want to become an entrepreneur, how do you align your time with that value? So that might look like if your kids wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, waking up at 6 and spending the first hour of your day doing some of those foundational things, right? Because I find that you're never going to have the time. You need to create it. So look at your week and try to find 2 or 3 hours that you can block and dedicate each week consistently to really do that work. So it's not just a pipe dream, but you're actually taking action to make it a reality.
Yep, yep, yep. Jenna, what do you wish you had known before you started your business?
Hmm. I knew it was going to be a lot of work, Doris, but I would say I wish I would have known that the personal journey and work, I was never going to arrive. I have done a lot of personal, mental, emotional growth in the past year, probably more so than I, really gave myself credit or time for in my life prior, because serving others really requires you to know yourself so you can show up authentically and represent what you do and don't believe. So if I'm going to stand here with gumption and tell you what I think you should do in your business, I want to really feel that I truly believe that. So the work that I put in to grow myself just as a human being, I really underestimated. It's all been valuable and extremely helpful, but that part has really been a ride.
That's a very interesting observation. I think I need some time to process that. And a lot of us might too. That's pretty deep. Thanks for sharing that, Jenna. So, last question before I let you go. We're almost out of time. How can people reach you if they're interested in learning more about First Light Health and its services, or maybe they'd like more information, or they just want to connect with you? What's the best way for them to learn more and to reach you?
Absolutely. So I show up on Instagram every day with tips for you to help manage your time more effectively. You can find me at First Light Coach on Instagram. And I'm here to serve. And I really like to help folks find, one or two things that they can implement immediately. So I do a personalized productivity session that I offer. And you can, if you're interested in that and 20 minutes with me to help you find some of those opportunities, you can DM me on Instagram.
Wow, that's great. Jenna, thanks so much for joining me this week. It was great to have you on the show and to learn more about time management and how to live a balanced and sane and productive and successful life. Those are things we all struggle with, I think. So thanks for sharing your insights today on the show.
Thank you, Doris. I really appreciated being here.
I appreciate you being here. And I appreciate all of you listeners. You are the reason I do this, after all. So thanks to you. I wanted to put in a little plug for my own website and YouTube channel. You can go to the savyentrepreneur.org, where you will find blog posts and transcripts of some of the shows. You'll find lots of past interviews with people, amazing people just like Jenna today. And there'll be more and more material posted as time goes on. I'm building up the library and the site. It's all free, so check it out. And if you like listening to podcasts on YouTube, yes, I know there are lots of you out there who actually listen to podcasts on YouTube. Go to the Savvy Entrepreneur Radio Show channel on YouTube, and you can find and download lots of past episodes of the show. And be sure to like them, comment on them, follow our channel so you don't miss the latest episodes. And by liking and commenting on the interviews, you'll be supporting the work of all kinds of amazing entrepreneurs. So check both of those out. Now, join me next weekend at 11 a.m. Central Time for another great guest. But until then, I'm Doris Nagel, wishing you happy entrepreneuring.